Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to you all, from those down the road to the folks around the world. Welcome back to another Potted History. Now, I thought I would make this impromptu video on whatever day this comes out because there's been a recent discussion on the internet revolving around a new film that's going to be coming out in the next year or two. Cleopatra, the famous Queen of Egypt. Now, the discussions have revolved around the casting of who is going to play Cleopatra, and that has been announced to be Gal Gadot, the Israeli actress famous for her roles in Wonder Woman, and for this year also Death on the Nile, starring Kenneth Branagh alongside her. So I thought I would create this video to discuss who Cleopatra really was. Now, there's been a lot of discussions about, was she the right actress? What sort of person should be playing Cleopatra? And that's not what this video is about. This isn't me giving my opinions on that particular subject. This is a video based upon who Cleopatra is, or was, sorry, and how she was integral to the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire, and also how she was such an influential individual to both Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. So, without further ado, here is my potted history on Cleopatra. Now, to understand who Cleopatra was, we first have to understand who her family were as well. You see, Cleopatra was descended from a man named Ptolemy. The kings and queens of Egypt were very unimaginative in their naming scheme. So this is the first Ptolemy out of about 13 in the 300-year history. So Ptolemy I was a companion and general under Alexander the Great, the famous general who created a massive empire spanning throughout Egypt, Babylon, the Middle East, his home region, home countries of Macedonia and Greece, a large empire. But when Alexander died in 323 BC, the empire fell very quickly, and so each of the generals were given little gifts of particular areas, particular regions to rule as kings or princes or whatever. And obviously Ptolemy received Egypt as his gift. Now, the first Ptolemy ruled from 323 BC until 282 BC. The name Cleopatra is also inherently Greek and also very unimaginative for the Ptolemy queens. There were 7 women by the name of Cleopatra. The one we are going to discuss today was number 7, and the first Cleopatra married Ptolemy V in 196 BC. It comes from the 2 Greek words, kleos, meaning glory, and pater, meaning father. Put them together and you have glory of the father. Alexander's sister was named Cleopatra. There were characters within Greek mythology also known as Cleopatra. And despite being kings or queens of Egypt, none of the Ptolemaic rulers actually bothered to learn the native Egyptian language. In fact, the only person to do so was Cleopatra VII, the Cleopatra of which we are going to talk about today. But despite being descended from Greeks or Macedonians, however you want to sort of range it, despite only speaking in Greek, despite the etymology of their name being inherently Greek, the Ptolemaic kings and queens of Egypt did keep up the practice from the ancient pharaohs of incestuous marriages. And this becomes evidently clear when you get to Cleopatra VII, when she, at the age of 17 or 18, marries her brother Ptolemy XIII in 51 or 52 BCE. Now, Cleopatra herself had a life filled with seesaw moments, moments of great high, great achievement, but then also moments of great hardship as well, or when all things seemed lost, at least for a ruler anyway. You see, in 69 BC she was born, but aged just 11 or 12 in 58 BC, she had to flee the country of Egypt with her father Ptolemy XII, him having been deposed from the seat of power by native Egyptians, who then reinstated a new monarchy. It would be at least 3 years before Ptolemy XII would amass a large army, storm into Egypt, and take back his throne. In 52 BC, Ptolemy XII died, and around the same time, or maybe just a little bit after, Cleopatra married her brother Ptolemy XIII. But this marriage didn't last long at all. The advisors to Ptolemy XIII urged him to depose Cleopatra and send her into exile, an act which he actually did. Now, concurrently with what is going on in Egypt, the death of the father, the marriage to the brother, and the deposing from the throne, Rome and the Roman Republic was going through its own civil war. Now, bear with me, hold on. Now, the two sides of this civil war were between Julius Caesar, came, he saw, he conquered, that man, we all know him, as well as Pompey the Great. Now, Pompey the Great was a man of much wealth. He was a great tactician in the military, as well as a person who believed himself to be the next Alexander the Great. Unfortunately, Pompey was on the losing side of this civil war, ultimately fleeing to Alexandria to seek an audience with the king of Egypt and hopefully turn the tide of the war. Now, previously, Pompey had been an ally to Ptolemy XII, the father, but upon the urgings of the advisors to the king of Egypt, Ptolemy XIII had A, refused Pompey's offer, and B, had him ambushed and murdered in order to show favour towards Julius Caesar, who was on the winning side of that civil war. But when Caesar, in hot pursuit of his rival, came to Alexandria and found him murdered, it was a slightly bittersweet moment. You see, they had been rivals and they were enemies during this civil war, but previously to that they had been great friends and had been tactically allied towards each other. So, again, bittersweet moment. In response to this, Caesar decided to ally himself with Cleopatra, and in a battle in 47 BC, known as the Battle of the Nile, he and Cleopatra took Alexandria, deposed and ultimately killed Ptolemy XIII, and reinstated Cleopatra as the sole queen of Egypt. But this wasn't just a political alliance between Egypt and the Roman Republic. This was a love affair between Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. Now, despite the iconography of modern day, many adaptations of Cleopatra's story, paintings, and all sorts of different things that we've consumed as a people of what Cleopatra was like, she apparently had very manly features and a hooked nose. But this did not stop her from seducing and creating a great attraction between her and Julius Caesar. He would respond with kindness, with gifts, with honours and titles, bringing her to Rome, and even bearing a son named Caesarion in 44 BC. But despite this, Caesar proclaimed himself dictator for life, and so was murdered on the steps of the Senate by Brutus and Cassius. "Et tu, Brute?" said Caesar, as he noticed Brutus was also part of this sort of gang to murder and take back control of the Senate. Now, skipping ahead to 41 BC, we find the first meeting of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. This most famous story is about to begin. Antony and Cleopatra, the famous play by William Shakespeare in the late 16th century, the moments in history which we remember from classes or from popular hearsay. Antony and Cleopatra, this tragic love story. Mark Antony would spend the best part of a year in Egypt with Cleopatra, leaving his wife and his children alone in the Roman Republic. But it wasn't just this one particular year. Mark Antony was given grantings of great posts within sort of the Roman provinces, and would gift Cleopatra vast swathes of these regions, including Cilicia, Cyprus, an area known as Cyrene, parts of Syria, all these different little sections of the Roman provinces, or the Roman Republic provinces, that had once been part of the Egyptian kingdom. But obviously, as the centuries had gone on, the kingdom had slowly decreased, whilst the Roman Republic had slowly increased. This was one of the goals that Cleopatra had, was to regain the power and the control of this mighty Ptolemaic kingdom. This was known as the donations of Alexandria in 34 BC. The Roman Republic were very upset by this move and these donations, and exiled Mark Antony. This sparked another civil war between Mark Antony and Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, which would last right up until Antony and Cleopatra's death in 30 BC. Now here I have a translation of Suetonius's The 12 Caesars, a sort of biography, if you will, of each of the generations of the Caesar family line, right from Julius Caesar until the Emperor Domitian. Now, Julius Caesar is not classed as a Roman emperor, rather his adopted nephew, Augustus, or Octavian, as he is known in this period, becomes that first emperor in 27 BC. Now, this extract that I'm about to read follows the period between 33 to 31 BC. Eventually, Augustus broke his friendship with Mark Antony, which had always been a tenuous one and in continual need of patching, and proved that his rival had failed to conduct himself as befitted a Roman citizen by ordering the will he had deposited at Rome to be opened and publicly read. This is the will of Mark Antony that we're about to read. It listed among Antony's heirs the illegitimate children fathered by him on Cleopatra. Nevertheless, when the Senate outlawed Antony, 32 BC, Augustus allowed all his relatives and friends to join him under safe conduct. Shortly thereafter, he defeated Antony in a sea battle of Actium, where the fighting went on so long that he spent the whole night aboard his ship. Now, the Battle of Actium, which Suetonius refers to, was a naval battle between the forces of Mark Antony and Cleopatra against Octavian. Now, Mark Antony and Cleopatra had taken a small section on the southern side of the Bay of Actium. Octavian took the northern part of this bay, and there isn't a very large stretch of water between the 2 points. One of Octavian's generals, by the name of Marcus Agrippa, blockaded Mark Antony and Cleopatra's forces, which meant that the side couldn't receive supplies or even go get the supplies in order to feed and keep up the morale of the soldiers or of the seamen. A lot of Antony's men deserted him, were malnourished, or contracted malaria. Realizing that there was no other way to deal with this situation, Antony and Cleopatra tried to make a break for Alexandria. Their ships were greater in number. Cleopatra bringing along 60 of her finest ships, and Mark Antony bringing a little over 300, whilst Octavian had only brought about, well, a little, maybe about just about 300, perhaps. So on the side of Mark Antony, there were more ships, but Octavian's ships were smaller, they were more nimble, they were easily manoeuvrable. So when the Battle of Actium commenced, Octavian's fleet were very quick to attack and then pull back, and or maneuver themselves around so that they wouldn't get hit. And this obviously isn't cannon fire, as we are presumptuously know today in sort of sea battles, but the main mode of which you would attack or destroy a vessel at sea in an ancient battle was through the use of fire arrows, or the use of boarding the ship, attacking it, and obviously destroying it and then going back. Cleopatra made a break for it. Most of her 60 ships survived the ploughing through and parting of Octavian's forces during the battle and headed straight for Alexandria. She did stop to wait for Mark Antony, who was right on her trail. Mark Antony and Cleopatra sailed to Alexandria. Octavian was very quick to catch up to Antony and Cleopatra, getting to Alexandria very quickly. In another extract here from Suetonius, just long enough to pacify the mutineers, Octavian had a little bit of trouble getting to Alexandria. He then took a roundabout route to Egypt by way of Asia and Syria, besieged Alexandria, where Antony had fled with Cleopatra, and soon reduced it. At the last moment, Antony sued for peace, but Augustus ordered him to commit suicide and inspected the corpse. He was so anxious to save Cleopatra as an ornament for his triumph that he actually summoned a Psylli, it's spelt like this, to suck the poison from her wound, supposedly the bite of an asp. So when we talk about, or when we discuss William Shakespeare's adaptation of Antony and Cleopatra, he does gain moments of the true history, despite never having been to Rome or never studied the histories of the ancient world or of Italy, where most of his plays were set. He does have an understanding of certain aspects of this story and certain aspects of this history. Now this Psylli, whatever, however you pronounce it, lady, was a particular woman from a region in Libya, which is said to have people who were immune to the bite of snake venom or asps. So that is why Octavian used one of these ladies to try and suck the blood from Cleopatra, so that perhaps the venom wouldn't sort of go too far and completely kill Cleopatra. Now, although you would expect Octavian to dispose the bodies of Antony and Cleopatra in a heinous way and make a statement about his power, he actually builds a mausoleum in Alexandria and buries the two side by side in it. But he does nick all of the treasure that Cleopatra had claimed, and he does make Egypt one of the provinces of Egypt. And by 27 BC, using the wealth that he had accumulated from the civil war and from Egypt, he becomes the first emperor of Rome. The empire of Rome, that would span for another 200 or 300 years following, was about to begin and was at that beginning point. There are suggestions that the Battle of Actium is that defining moment when the empire was created and the republic was lost. But the fact that Octavian proclaimed himself the emperor in 27 BC, taking on the name Imperator, which is sort of what emperor is, that is the more definitive point at which the empire begins. So there we have it, in a slightly roundabouty sort of way. I have detailed in brief a sort of potted history of Cleopatra, as well as remarking some moments within sort of Roman history, moving from a Roman Republic to the Roman Empire, which we all recognise from history, or that we all know about. So I hope that you have enjoyed this particular video. I know that I haven't been keeping to a regular schedule as of recently, but I hope to be back keeping up a more regular schedule in future. I have a special series coming up in early November, and I hope to see you all there. But for now, it is the end of the video, so I will say see you later.